Good morning, everyone. This is Mike Vermelli here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for September 2nd, 2019, recorded around 11:42 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hurricane Dorian has not really weakened a whole lot, but it has to 155 miles per hour. Still an extremely dangerous Category 4 hurricane. Still moving west at 1 mile an hour. It did slow down overnight and nearly has come to a stall and is now moving at about 1 mile per hour towards the west. And we look at the IR satellite presentation loop here, you can see that the structure of Dorian has significantly degraded over the last couple of hours. And another thing to note is that there was an eye wall replacement cycle that was going on within inside Dorian, and that cycle may be about ready to kind of wrap up and finish. While this does weaken the storm per se, this is not necessarily good news for the Florida coast, as what this ends up doing is expanding this wind field even further. And if we go to the public advisory, you can see that hurricane force winds are out to 45 miles and tropical storm force winds are out to 140 miles. Right now, though, that's as currently. What this would do is extend that even further, so that even if the worst case, or the best case scenario, that Dorian just moves right up along to the north, there will still be some residual impacts of tropical storm conditions along the Florida East Coast. However, there's a lot of caveats to when and exactly where Dorian will take that turn towards the north. Currently, it is expected to come very close to the coast, and if we pop up here the interactive cone map here, we'll pop on the interactive cone, and you can see that Dorian is expected to come very close to the Florida coast, not that far offshore of the Florida coast, and this is going to cause, you can already see there's actually tropical storm force winds extend out to near West Palm Beach and Port St. Lucie. This is the sustained tropical storm force winds. And as Dorian presumably starts to make that turn towards the west-northwest, we'll have to see exactly when that turn begins. Some indications are that it would turn a little bit later still and come a little bit closer, or turn a little farther earlier. The mean track of this is plotted in the official NHC forecast, which you should always refer to, and that brings the or the center extremely close to the Florida East Coast. And you can see pretty much all of East Central Florida is still in that cone of uncertainty, the 3-day cone here, and even up towards portions of Orlando and eastern Orange County. That eye wobbles just a little bit. You know, if it wobbles just a little bit, that could, bring hurricane conditions to, sustained hurricane conditions to a larger region here. So it's not necessarily that we might see a landfall. Now, a landfall is still possible. While it is becoming a little bit more unlikely, a landfall is still possible, and you could see this core get really dangerously close depending on the wobbles. And you can see in the IR presentation loop, there was a little bit of a wobble sort of towards the north, and then might start becoming back towards the west again. And you can see the impacts, or you can see some of the cloud shield from Dorian approaching the Florida East Coast here. Also important to note, within Dorian, there's been a storm surge warning that is extended along the east coast of Florida to the Flagler-Volusia County line. A storm surge watch has been extended northward across the Georgia coast to the Savannah River, and a hurricane warning along the east coast of Florida has been extended northward to the Flagler-Volusia line, and a hurricane watch has been extended northward from the Altima Sound to Georgia. So taking a look at the official track forecast here, you can see these watches and warnings here, and if you go to pop on the storm surge inundation maps, we'll pop that up really quickly and just show you what we're expecting. We are expecting roughly about 4 to 6 feet on some of the barrier islands here. We are expecting about 4 to 6 feet on the barrier islands as Dorian again could be tracking pretty close, and that onshore flow is going to bring that storm surge, and especially on the back side of Dorian, as the center, maybe right here, the backside winds of Dorian pushing that storm surge onshore, and that's going to be causing, if you remember Hurricane Matthew from 2016, that backshore, that onshore flow on the backside pushed that storm surge right inland. So that's going to be a reason for concern. Again, about 4 to 6 feet above the normal dry ground layer from Port St. Lucie all the way through near Daytona Beach, and that's highly dependent on exactly where the track of Dorian is. Again, there is still the potential for deviations, and the NHC does mention that only a small deviation to the left could bring the core onshore, and even if it doesn't, the Dorian's wind field is predicted to expand, which would bring the hurricane force winds closer to the east coast of Florida, even if the track does not change. So that is important to note, that right now, just because you may not think you're going to get the tropical storm force wind conditions, certainly once this wind field starts to expand and start to weaken, that could impact more of the metro areas and portions in the western Florida area. So we're going to have to continue to monitor the trends on that. I do want to point this out, that the GFS has been wrong on its initialization, and this is from Michael Ventris. He's a meteorological scientist at the IBM company, part of the Weather Channel, and he had noted that the GFS had not been verifying well in the predictive locations of Hurricane Dorian. And this was from the 06Z cycle. The 12Z cycles came in, but that was still initializing wrong. That apparently Dorian was supposed to be well to the north at this point, or to the north and west, and Dorian has not been. Dorian is actually staying more towards the south of this. So the GFS track is wrong, and I do want to point that out. Also from Michael Ventris, if I can find it here. This is the H-Wharf models, and the H-Wharf models have been pretty good with the track of Dorian, as well as, if we can get to, this is the Canadian model, and the Canadian model has actually done really good on the initialization, and that shows it moving into Florida. So again, while the track is not set in stone, and this does not necessarily imply a landfall in Florida, but any small deviations really start to matter. This is where everything really starts to come into play. Everything will start to matter now, given the exact track of Hurricane Dorian. One interesting thing that we're going to be able to watch is the sea level pressure in the winds here through the weather station that I have set up. We will be watching exactly what wind field and just exactly how much that pressure drops down. And as the storm gets closer, you'll start to see these winds pick up. So right now we've had about a sustained 4-mile-an-hour wind, or a sustained 2-mile-an-hour wind, gusts up to 4 miles an hour. So so far, not much happening, but we'll continue to monitor progress of Dorian. Another thing to note is that we have expanded the tropical storm warnings further inland. The Weather Service Office in Melbourne has extended these tropical storm force warnings to include Orange, Lake, Seminole, and inland Volusia counties, hurricane warnings from Indian River all the way up through the Flagler Volusia County line. So, and if we just take a look at the radar, this is from the Weather Service Office in Melbourne. You can see that the squalls of Hurricane Dorian are now beginning to bring squally conditions to portions of the Florida East Coast, and tropical storm force winds have been tropical storm force gusts have been analyzed in Fort Pierce and portions towards the south near West Palm Beach, and those conditions will only begin to increase across the rest of this area over the coming 12 to 24 hours, and then so on and so forth. And for interest in the Orlando metro, I will go ahead and read the tropical storm warnings. Sustained winds up to 35 to 45 miles an hour, but gusts up to 65. So we could see gusts near hurricane force winds are possible. Hurricane force gusts are possible in the Orlando metro, really beginning about Wednesday morning-ish, but tropical storm force winds arrive tomorrow morning, and 3 to 6 inches of rain will be possible. So this is just specifically looking at the Orlando metro, but again, if you live along the coast here, if you live anywhere from Indian River, Brevard County, Melbourne, up towards Flagler County, Volusia County, those areas, hurricane conditions are certainly expected there, and hurricane warnings are in effect. Again, we will be continuing to monitor the progress of Hurricane Dorian. I will have a new video update out later this afternoon. For right now, that is going to be it. I hope you have a great rest of your morning and afternoon as we head into afternoon, and I will be back later. Stay safe.